Then, he let loose a barrage of punches and kicks to vent his frustration. The unjust slap had filled Toddy with murderous intent. "That's enough. Toddy, stop it. If you keep this up, someone could die." Lin quickly intervened when she saw the situation was getting out of hand. "Humph, he deserved it. He's just a bully." Toddy, still angry, kicked a few more times before finally walking away. "Mr. Reese, Mr. Adler, this is Toddy," Lin said. "Nice to meet you." Dustin nodded with a faint smile. "HMPH, who told you to get involved?" Toddy looked hostile. "Huh." Dustin was baffled when he heard that. He wondered if Toddy had lost his mind. "Toddy, what's wrong with you?" "Mr. Reese was just trying to help us," Lin explained immediately. "Help us? Do I need their help? Even if they didn't intervene, I could handle those punks," Toddy boasted, crossing his arms. He finally had a chance to shine. But someone had stolen his thunder, so he was unhappy. "If you could handle it, you wouldn't have let a single slap knock you out." Cornelius suddenly chimed in. You know nothing." Toddy's face stiffened, and he became agitated. He retorted, "Do you think that bastard could have hurt me if he hadn't sneaked up on me? Let me tell you the truth. They'd be no match for me in a fair fight, even if they teamed up." "That's right. Toddy is incredibly skilled and powerful. He could easily handle 100 opponents." The other Moonlight Reverence disciples agreed. Toddy was the strongest disciple in the Moonlight Reverence, second only to their mentor. He had once defeated over 10 thugs with his bare hands. The locals also viewed him as a hero, which added to his fame. "Sneak attack. He attacked right in front of you. How can you call that a sneak attack?" Cornelius replied calmly. He couldn't accept that someone would have such weak skills and refused to admit it. Such a person wouldn't accomplish much. "I made my point, but the guy suddenly attacked me. Isn't that a sneak attack? Are you going senile?" Toddy retorted, glaring at Cornelius. "Huck, I'm going senile." Cornelius' face darkened. How dare a talentless thrash who hadn't even reached the divine level insult him? "What? If you have a problem, we can settle this with a spar. I'd like to see what you're made of," Toddy challenged Cornelius. If he couldn't even handle an old man like Cornelius, he might as well eat his shoe. "Yeah, you guys doubted Toddy's strength, didn't you? Let's settle it on the battle ring if you have the guts." The other Moonlight Reverence disciples goaded Cornelius. "Sir Reese, I'm beginning to lose patience." Cornelius took a deep breath. He showed visible signs of losing his temper. After all, Toddy and the group seemed to underestimate him. "Hey, are you afraid to accept the challenge?" Toddy sneered disdainfully. He added, "If you don't have the guts, don't act tough in front of me. Otherwise, you'll only humiliate yourselves. Remember, don't try to provoke me because you can. Handle the wrath of a future grandmother." "All right, Toddy, please stop this nonsense," Lin pleaded when Cornelius's patience had reached its limit. She continued, "No matter what, Mr. Reese and Mr. Adler have helped us. Aren't you being rude to them?" She knew that if Dustin hadn't stepped in sooner, she might have died. Now that Toddy was being so rude, it really annoyed her. "Lin, these guys are looking down on us. I just want to prove that Moonlight Reverence is just as good and show them what we're made of," Toddy asserted. "That's not proof, that's provocation. If you keep acting like this, I'm going to get angry," Lin scolded. "Okay, I'm sorry. I won't act up anymore. Please don't be mad." Toddy apologized and tried to appease her. "Mr. Reese, Mr. Adler, I'm really sorry for Toddy's behavior earlier. I hope you can forgive him." Lin turned to Dustin and Cornelius to apologize. "Since you're a reasonable young lady, I'll let it pass." Cornelius finally relented. "Tisk, you're just putting on a show," Toddy muttered. He knew he could defeat Cornelius with a few punches and kicks. "Mr. Reese, Mr. Adler, shall we go in together?" Lin gestured an invitation. "Sure," Dustin replied. Then, they entered the Martial Arts Alliance. Many martial arts guilds had gathered in the arena. The renowned figures sat in the first rows. The disciples of Moonlight Reverence eagerly scanned the surroundings. Given their status, they had never seen such a lively martial arts event. Among those presented were the prominent figures who were their role models. "Hey, isn't that Bryn Palmer from Deathly Hurricane? I've heard he has such sophisticated footwork. His opponents can't predict his kicks when he attacks. Without a doubt, he's one of the best young talents in Balerno martial arts. Hey, I also see Xanderthump from the Starry Arches." He can control people's minds and has other mysterious and unpredictable abilities. He's pretty scary but strong. Look over there. That's Jason Crestwind, the #1 elite of the Nephrite Sun. He's only 30, but he's already an honored member of the Martial Arts Alliance. His cultivation is second to none. He's a true martial arts genius. The disciples of Moonlight Reverence chatted excitedly. They showcased and admired these renowned martial artists. HMPH. What's so special about them? They just had better resources and started training earlier, Toddy grumbled. He continued, if I had their resources, I'd already be a grandmother with my talent. That's true. Toddy is just as talented as them. The others agreed. Being confident is good, but don't overdo it. Compared to these prestigious martial guilds, Moonlight Reverence is far behind, Lin cautioned. Lin, it seems you doubt my abilities, Toddy replied defiantly. He added, trust me. In a few years, I can beat Bryn, Xander, Jason, and that famous young grandmother. I can surpass them, too. At those words, some martial artists looked at Toddy with disdain. They were stunned at the audacity of this newcomer. He claimed to be better than the young grandmother. The young grandmother had defeated Augustus and was now challenging Ronald. Even the most talented leaders of the major guilds would not have the audacity to be so arrogant. They were baffled as to how a nobody like Toddy could muster the courage to boast in such a manner. Toddy, choose your words carefully. Lin frowned. She whispered, the young grandmother is a once-in-a-century prodigy. He's in a league of his own, far above the rest of us. How can we even begin to compare? Without a pause, she added, he became a grandmother in his 20s. Meanwhile, we haven't even reached the divine level. The difference between us is immeasurable. Even if we practice endlessly, we will never be able to catch up. Hey, Lin, you are making someone else look good while making yourself look bad. You should know that one day, I, Toddy Yarns, will reach the rank of grandmother. Until then, that young grandmother and I are on the same level, Toddy declared confidently. You're right. With Toddy's dedication and hard work, he would soon become a grandmother. The Moonlight Reverence disciples chimed in. You're young and ignorant. And yet, you dare to talk about becoming a grandmother as a lowly martial artist. I really don't understand where you get your confidence from. Cornelius suddenly interrupted. He had trained for decades but was still halfway to becoming a grandmother. He had never managed to free himself from his limitations. It puzzled him that someone with no talent and strength spoke, as if it were as easy as ABC to reach the level of a grandmother. Cornelius smirked when he heard that Toddy even dared to compare himself to Dustin. That was the height of arrogance and ignorance. Humph, what the hell do you know? You're just an old man with bad eyesight. How could you possibly know my strength? Toddy retorted arrogantly. He continued, I don't want to brag. Give me 3 to 5 years, and I will undoubtedly reach the level of a grandmother. 3 to 5 years, Cornelius sneered. He added, even if you gave yourself 30 or 50 years, it would still be an impossible feat. You might as well give up on that dream. Hey, old fool, how dare you underestimate me? How about sparring with me? Toddy glared at Cornelius as if he wanted a fight. Toddy, please stop. Lin frowned. It's not my fault. That old man is provoking me on purpose. Toddy shrugged. Those who were able to join the alliance are talented people. Can you please be a little more humble? Lin advised. I can't help it. I have extraordinary talent and strength. Even if I wanted to be humble, I couldn't. Toddy shook his head. Oh, that's quite impressive. If so, I'd like to learn from you. Who might you be? At that moment, a clear female voice suddenly sounded. Everyone turned and saw a group of young men and women dressed impeccably. They gave off an imposing air. The group was led by a woman in a red dress and white hat. She was armed with a long sword, and her piercing eyes scrutinized the surroundings. She strode through the crowd, and everyone dispersed instinctively. It was as if they could feel an invisible pressure emanating from her. Who are you? Toddy looked at the woman. After removing her hat, the woman in red cautiously approached him. She said coldly, Josie Yale, Boulderthorn's Frostlanders chief. What? Josie of the Frostlanders? As those words were spoken, the crowd was in an uproar. Boulderthorn was already one of the top major guilds in Balerno. As the chief of the subsidiary guild, Josie was renowned in the martial world. She stood out among her peers with her unfathomable cultivation skills, and outstanding swordsmanship. I've heard that Josie is cold and ruthless. She never hesitates to kill others. Those brats are in trouble now. Serves them right. A disciple from some third-rate guild dares to compare himself to a young grandmother? He's really ignorant and arrogant. The crowd began to whisper as if they were preparing for a show. In martial arts, strength spoke for itself, and the strongest was in charge. So, you're Josie. I've heard so much about you. Lin greeted Josie respectfully. At that moment, Lin tried to diffuse the tension. However, Josie ignored her and glanced at Toddy. She said coldly, "You just claimed to have extraordinary talents and strength, right? Well, show me." Then, she drew her long sword and threw the scabbard at Toddy's feet. This action was considered a challenge in the martial arts world. It would be a fair fight if the other person accepted. But if they refused, they would be mocked, and their reputation would take a hit. "Josie, Toddy was just joking. Please don't take it seriously," Lin quickly interjected. She continued, "Everyone is here today to witness a duel between the two grandmasters. There is no need for hostility. Josie, please let it slide. HMPH, the young grandmother is my idol. How dare you brag so shamelessly here?" Josie said coldly. She added, "I'll give you two options. Kneel down and apologize, or accept the challenge, and I'll break your leg." "Josie, don't be so arrogant." Toddy couldn't hold back any longer. He retorted angrily, "You're only confident because Boulderthorn has your back, right? What's so special about that? In a one-on-one fight, I wouldn't lose to you." "Toddy, what are you saying?" Lin became agitated. Josie was the chief of the Frostlanders, a subsidiary guild of Boulderthorn. Her reputation preceded her. Lin knew that Toddy hadn't even reached the threshold of the divine level. So, how would he be able to challenge Josie? "Lin, don't worry. Josie is just some chief. Step aside and watch me defeat her." Toddy brimmed with confidence. He thought defeating Josie was his best chance to gain fame and become a prominent martial artist in Balerno. "Toddy, she's in a different league. Don't do it," Lin pleaded anxiously. There was a great difference in strength between a lowly martial artist and one at the divine level. This challenge amounted to self-destruction. "Lin, although Josie is strong, I'm not inferior to her. If I can't defeat someone like her, there's no point in me staying in the martial arts world." Toddy dismissed her advice. "Toddy, stop." Lin wanted to say more, but was cut off by Toddy. "Lin, step aside and watch me. Today, I, Toddy Yarns, will take the opportunity to make a name for myself in this battle." He confidently walked toward Josie as if he would win the battle. "Lin, don't worry about it. Toddy wouldn't enter blindly. He always has a plan." "Exactly. He's made a breakthrough lately. So, dealing with Josie is a piece of cake." Several disciples of the Moonlight Reverence had unwavering faith in Toddy. "Not bad. You actually dare to accept my challenge." Josie shot Toddy a hostile glare. "HMPH, I'm 7 feet tall. Why would I be afraid to accept your challenge?" Toddy said proudly, clasping his hands behind his back. He continued, "Josie, you wanted to fight me, right? Attack me with everything you've got. I want to see what you can do." "All right, I'm not going to hold back. Today, I won't use my sword. I'll fight you with my bare hands. If you can withstand my attacks for 10 moves, I'll admit defeat." With that, Josie stepped forward and charged ahead at top speed. Josie impressed everyone with her agility. "Cloud palm technique," she shouted. As she got closer, her palm hit Toddy from below. She aimed for his chest and abdomen. Toddy scoffed, "Just a petty trick," but before he could fight back, her palm hit his chest. In an instant, it felt as if he had been hit by a speeding car, and he flew several feet into the air. He spat out a cloud of gruesome mist in the form of blood. With a dull thud, he crashed to the ground and slid several feet before coming to a halt. "Toddy!" The Moonlight Reverence disciples were shocked and rushed to his side. They couldn't believe their senior had been defeated so easily. A single blow was enough to send Toddy flying. It surprised them, and they began to doubt his supposed strength. Some wondered if Toddy was as weak as he looked. He was talking big before the fight. "I thought he'd be strong because of his confidence. It turned out to be the opposite. He's completely useless. He couldn't even take a single hit, but had the gall to challenge Josie. How foolish." Comparing a small guild like this to a major one like Boulderthorn is like comparing apples to oranges. It's a clear and overwhelming mismatch. The crowd mocked the injured Toddy. How could he boast about surpassing a young grandmother when he couldn't even handle one blow? He was nothing but a failure.